So hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Terry. Hope you guys and gals are doing well. And yes, I'm finally actually feeling better. That head cold I had, whatever it was, is gone. So I am back and ready to talk about games and technology here for you guys and gals. Okay, so look, this video is going to be about Starfield, but not in the sense you might be thinking. Like, it's not going to be a dedicated Starfield video or anything like that. It's going to be talking about the performance in game and the upscaling technology here. Okay. Now, I've seen threads on Reddit, on Twitter, probably anywhere you could possibly think of right now about how these people that are playing Starfield on PC, they have, overclocked and delitted 13900 KSs, and, they got liquid metal on there, and it's overclocked to like 6.5 gigahertz across all the P cores, and the E cores are overclocked as well, and they got, 7,000 mega transfers per second, DDR5s, like 64 gigs of it. And then they even have a really high overclocking RTX 4090, all water cooled, all custom loop, all that jazz. And at 1440p in Starfield, they are lucky to get 60 frames per second. But if they enable the FSR upscaler, or they have the DLSS with FrameGen mod installed, they're lucky to get let's say 70 or 80 frames per second with ultra settings at 1440p on Starfield. And here's the thing, in my opinion, at least for me, for the way I play games, 60 frames per second in a game like Starfield is just fine because it's not competitive. You know what I mean? It's not multiplayer. You're not competing against somebody else. It's just a single player exploratory RPG from Bethesda. It's their formula. You know what I mean? But, and maybe I'm in the minority with this here, but I've been thinking about this here for a long time, ever since DLSS was first introduced, years ago. And then AMD came out with their FSR technology, you know what I mean? But I've always thought that game developers would use upscalers as kind of like a shortcut for their optimization. In other words, that like, well, hey, the game runs good enough, but if you enable the upscaler and if you use DLSS with an NVIDIA card to, implement frame generation, you can actually get the frame rate you really want to. And it's like, no, you should optimize your game to work well right out of the box. And then if you want to get even more performance, you can enable DLSS or use frame generation to really achieve the type of frame rate that you're wanting, because NVIDIA and AMD both say that you really should not use frame gen at lower frame rates. Like, in other words, they're not saying that you should play a game at 30 frames per second, use frame gen to get to 60, because that will introduce a ton of artifacts and it just will not look good. But let's say you're already gaming at like 120 and you want to get up to 144, it would look a lot better at the much higher frame rates to, put those extra frames in at the higher frame rates than at the low frame rates. You know what I mean? And I understand that. I really do, But again, as I said a second ago, it just seems like some game developers use these upscalers as a crutch for a lack of optimization. And I made a TikTok the other day about how, Todd Howard went on record saying that, oh, well, if you're having bad performance in Starfield, you might just want to upgrade your PC. And here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing. In a way, he is right, because there are a lot of people out there that are expecting their, Intel 4000 series, like the 4790K. Yeah, it might have been a beast of a chip back then, but these days, it's quite a few years old now, and it just can't keep up with the newer stuff. And, they expect their, GTX 780 to be able to play Starfield or any game for that matter at 1440p, 120 frames per second. Yeah, some games it still might be able to push that out, like older games, but newer games, probably not. And they're asking a lot of their aging hardware. And I know that nobody likes to admit, well, hey, back in the day, I spent $4,000 on this PC, so I better be able to do what I wanted to do now, still 5-6 years later. And unfortunately, that's just not the way technology works. Technology is the one thing in life that whenever new stuff comes out, 9 times out of 10, it's way faster than last gen. It's a lot more power efficient, or if it's more powerful and uses more power, it makes up for it by being just that much faster than what came before it. You know what I mean? And, with a game like Starfield that's a little bit not that optimized with high-end hardware, like my system, for example, you can just brute force frame rates. Like if you really just want to brute force it to get a steady 60, you totally could. But at the same time, though, a game like Starfield shouldn't run as bad as it does. You know what I mean? Like, let's just call it for what it is. It's just not optimized the way that it could be. But I will say this here, though. They did do a really awesome job at optimizing it for consoles. I know on any Xbox you go to play it on, the frame rate is very stable, very smooth, and there's zero jitter from the stuff I've been seeing online, like no frame drops or anything like that. So I think in that regard, they did a pretty bang up job at optimizing it for Xbox, which if that's the case, awesome job. Y'all did pretty good. But now I'm going to just turn this whole thing and ask you guys and gals out there, the audience, a question here. While DLSS, FSR, and Intel's own version of it, whatever they're going to call it, it might be wonderful technology, but what do you all think? Do you think that developers relying on these upscalers are a good thing, a bad thing? Are you somewhere in the middle? Do me a favor, sign off in the comments below, and I will catch you guys and gals next time.